Hi everybody, I'm Kimberly Einmo, Janome's national spokesperson. Welcome back to my studio for another Done Before Dinner. Now I'm here in the studio with Cheeto, also known as Janome Cat, and Mr. Kim. He's behind the camera. Say hi.
Hi.
And we have got a really fun project for you today. We are going to be making these really cute traditional Japanese rice bags. Isn't it darling? This is a fast project. You're gonna love it. You really can get it done before dinner. The entire project takes around 2 hours from start to finish, and I'm going to walk you through every step of the process. So we are going to have a fun day here. I hope you're ready to gather some supplies. So let's talk exactly about what we're going to need to make your cute little rice bag. And it's even lined. Check this out. We've even lined it. And it's a little drawstring bag. So here's what you're going to need. Cheeto's kind of laying on the props, but that's okay. All of you who follow me know that Cheeto is a big help in the studio, and I couldn't do without him. So the first thing you're going to need some squares for the outer fabric of your bag. It takes a total of 5 7.5-inch squares. Now what you see here are 4 7.5-inch squares. I'm going to use a little different fabric this time with these cute little kitties in it. But we need 4 7.5-inch squares for the sides. And then you're going to need another 7.5-inch square for the bottom. So I've chosen to use a different fabric for the bottom. You can use directional fabrics, and we're going to talk about that. But here you can see I used a different fabric for the bottom from my sides. So there you go. You need 5 7.5-inch by 7.5-inch squares for your outer part of the bag and the bottom. Then you're going to need 5 7.5-inch by 7.5-inch squares for the lining. So it makes it really easy. You can absolutely use layer cake squares. If you have a layer cake, by all means get that and pick some squares that you like. Trim them down to 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches and pick, again, 5 for the outer portion of the bag and 5 for the inner portion or the lining of the bag. And last but not least, you're going to need 5 squares of very low loft or thin batting for your bag. Sorry about that. So I recommend using leftover bits, whatever you may have on hand. You're going to need some leftovers. Probably use something like Hobbs Thermore, which is really, really thin, or an 80-20 blend. So something that's very lightweight and very, very thin is best. I don't recommend a high loft or even a medium loft batting, but do try to use up the batting pieces that you may have on hand and trim them down to 7.5 inches square. And you're going to need 5 of those. And then finally, you're going to need 2 2.5-inch strips by about 40 inches. I've just used some jelly roll strips. These are going to be for the ties of the bag, which Cheeto is trying to model. Is he in the shot here? He's trying to get in the rice bag, as you can see. But these would be for the ties. See, he knows we're talking about the ties. We're going to use 2 2.5-inch strips for the ties, and you're going to need 2 different 2.5-inch strips. Again, 2 2.5-inch strips by the length of your fabric for the tabs to hold the ties. So that's it for the supplies as far as fabric. Now, you're going to want to have on hand your screwdriver, maybe, and we're going to be using either the A or the O foot for piecing. I'm going to be using the O foot. That comes standard with the Janome machines, and that's your 1/4-inch piecing foot. Now today it's important to know that we are not going to be using a perfect scant 1/4-inch seam. There's a lot of forgiveness in this project where you won't have to worry about having your 1/4-inch seam perfectly scant. We're just going to be using a regular 1/4-inch seam for the most part. You also would want to find your G foot, which comes standard. We're going to use that for top stitching. And if you have your S foot, which is like your joining foot, it's got this little flange right down the middle, we're going to be using that too. And this is just optional, but I do have my walking foot available, or my AccuFeed Flex foot. You might want that. Last, we're going to use you're going to need a small ruler where we will be able to see the 1/4 inch marks on the ruler, and you're going to need a fabric marking pen because we're going to make some marks on our fabrics. And finally, you're going to want something for turning, and I'm going to use a chopstick. It's perfect for turning these long strips into, that's going to be our tabs and for our straps. So grab yourself a chopstick or something for turning and get all of your supplies together. Meet me back here and I'm going to tell you what we do next. Now that you have all of your supplies cut, take your lining pieces and set them aside along with the pieces for your strips, for the straps and the little tabs. Set those aside for right now. We're only going to be dealing with the 5 7.5 inch squares of our outer fabric and the bottom and our batting pieces. And you want to layer them. You want to layer 1 batting piece per square. Now we're going to lay these pieces out like a cross with the bottom right in the center, and you're going to lay your sides of your bag, because essentially we're making a cube or we're making a box. And you're going to put your bottom in the center, and then you're going to lay your other bag sides with the batting. You're going to lay those so that we have them and we can see everything is right side up for the moment. The reason why is I'm actually using a directional fabric here, and where you can see it on my fabric is all my little huts. We want the direction facing so that the direction they're all in the same direction with the bottom towards the bag bottom. So here's my little huts, and I want them facing towards the bag bottom so that when this is made into a cube, they will all be right side up. I won't have any upside down huts. Now the cats kind of go every which way on this fabric, but that's okay. The one thing that I noticed for the direction were the little huts, the little bamboo huts. So once we have these laid out, we have a little marking to do. So you're going to take your fabric marker and a ruler, and we need to mark a 1/4 inch in from each corner. So we're going to do that on the batting side. And this is what's going to be attached to the bottom. So we need to take our ruler and lay it right on top so that I've lined up the 1/4 inch marks right on the corner, and we're just going to put a little dot right there. We need to do this on all the bag sides, but just at the bottom where it's going to join to the bag bottom itself. And you can see how I've marked little dots? Now any kind of a Sharpie or any kind of ballpoint pen or fabric marker is going to be fine. This will never show, you don't have to worry about it. And do that on all 4 pieces.
And all 4 corners, or just the 2 bottoms?
Just the 2 bottoms. That's a great question, Mr. Kim. Just the 2 bottom. The edge that's going to be sewn to the bag bottom gets the little marks. And I'm just putting those little dots right there. Okay, and then layer this back and make sure again you have the direction of your directional fabric. Now if you don't have a directional fabric, you don't need to worry about it, but you do still need to make the dots on the batting side of these pieces. Now the last thing to know is on this piece, the bottom, I marked all 4 corners with those dots. So you're going to need all 4 corners on the bag bottom, on the batting side, and then flip it around. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to move over to the sewing machine and we're going to start stitching from dot to dot. All right, Mr. Kim had a good thought here. What was that?
You only did two of the side squares, but you probably you did ahead of time.
I did. That's a great point. I already had marked two more just to save time. I had marked all of them. So now all of the outside bag sides have the dots on the portion that's going to connect to the bag bottom, and the bag bottom has all four corners marked. So let's go over to the sewing machine, and I've got a great little bonus tip for you about how to combine your small pieces of batting. Look here, I bet you didn't even notice. I actually pieced my batting to make the square because I wanted to use up all my little leftover bits. And I'm going to show you how to do that so it's nice and smooth and doesn't have a lump in it. So that's kind of a little bonus thing I'm going to show you right off the bat. So I'm here on my Continental M8 today. I love this machine. I love my CM17 too, but it's all set up for embroidery, and I've been embroidering a lot of fun kangaroo designs. So it's all set up for that. I guess Cheeto's echoing my sentiments, but I thought I'd start with a fun little bonus lesson just because I like to use up small pieces of batting. Like I have these two pieces of batting that weren't the right size for this project, but it's very easy to zigzag them together so that you can use them for projects like this, because I love using up leftovers, and I'm sure you do too. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my stitch menu here, and I'm going to pick stitch number 9. And Mr. Kim, if you want to come a little closer, stitch number 9, that M means middle. That's the needle position. The R stands for right. L stands for left. That means it's going to shift your needle either to the left or to the right or right in the middle. And we're going to pick stitch number 9, that zigzag with the middle. And right here, I want you to change the settings so that your stitch width is 5.0 and your stitch length is 3.0. All right, I have my machine threaded with neutral thread, and I'm using my S foot, and that has that flange right down the center, and it's a joining foot, and that's going to give us this beautiful join right here. And we're going to go ahead and Cheeto, no, I don't need your help right now, and we're going to line up these batting pieces on either side of the flange. I don't know, Mr. Kim, if you're getting that. Cheeto, thank you so much for your help, bud. And we're going to get ready here and stitch these together. Okay, remember we've got the batting pieces on either side of the flange. We're going to drop the presser foot, and now we're just going to stitch these together. Now go slow, don't race, and we just want to keep the batting pieces lightly together. We are not overlapping them. We are just joining them. And go all the way to the end. This is a great technique for any time you have a craft project or something small for quilts like placemats. And now I would just trim this up to the right size. It's bigger than 7.5 inches. But look how beautiful that join is. There's no lump or bump. It's nice and flat and totally usable for a project like this, or something like Christmas stockings or placemats or something small, a little table runner. And it's a great way to use up those extra pieces of batting. So that's a little bonus. All right, I'm going to get the machine set up for our stitching. You're going to want to use your O foot, if you have it, which is your 1/4 inch foot, and then we'll set up the machine and we'll start stitching our bag together. All right, I've put my O foot on my machine, and now we're going to set up for the right stitch that we want. So I'm going to go to my decorative stitches, and I'm going to select the quilt menu icon, and then stitch number 2 is already that 1/4 inch, exactly at 8.3. That's a full 1/4 inch. It's perfect for today. And your stitch length should be 2.5. You could do 2.4, but I wouldn't go any smaller than that. Now what we're going to do is take any side, bag side and the bottom, and flip them right sides together so that we are aligning the dots. Now you could put a pin in these if you want, but I'm pretty confident that mine are going to match up. So I'm not going to pin them, but what I am going to do is come over here, lower my presser foot, and then I've got this wonderful thumb wheel right here on the M8, the Continental M8, and I'm going to lower that needle right down until it's perfect, lower it into the fabric, and I'm going to touch the lock stitch, and we're going to go ahead and lock those stitches in place. It's very important that you start a 1/4 inch in, that right on that dot, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam to the next dot and then lock it. It's very important that you reinforce the start and stop of these so that the bottom of your bag doesn't pull out. All right, let's go ahead and sew. Here we go. And go right to the dot, one more stitch, and then lock the stitch in place. You could reverse if you want, but this works too. And then I'm going to use my scissor button. We've got one side attached. Now I'm going to go back and do the opposite side and put that right sides together, and again line up where the dots are and just kind of line these up. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be as close as possible. And I'm going to use my thumb wheel here, and I'm going to lock this in place. Now I'm going to go back and put the opposite side on, right sides together, and align these raw edges so that I can match up the points. And we're going to bring this over here, and I'm going to use the thumb wheel to lower that right into the fabric. And we've touched the button, so it's going to lock the stitch. All right, Cheeto, there we go. And we're going to keep going forward. I have a lot of help in the studio today. Go all the way to the end, go to the dot, stop exactly on the dot, and then lock the stitch. Go ahead and cut. Now we're going to go back and add the next side, paying careful attention to the direction again. Line these up. Now here you can either use pins or clips or something if you want to hold this in place so that you get these right lined up exactly. And you want to keep those seam allowances kind of out of the way to get started. All right, so we're going to slip this under the presser foot. And something else you can do is, if you're not using your AccuFeed Flex foot, which is fine, I'm just using my O foot, you can go into your flyout menu right here, and I'm going to lower the presser foot pressure just a bit by taking it down a little and then closing that. And that means that it won't push down so hard on all these layers. We're going to lock the stitch. Again, I'm going to lower the, there we go, that thumb wheel. I'm going to use that to do precise positioning. To go back, we're going to take the third side that we need to add, paying careful attention to the direction of the fabric again, and we're going to put it right sides together, bring it back over, and we're going to align those dots. You can put a clip or a pin in it to hold it in place now if you want. It's very important. There we go. And then we're going to use the thumb wheel to line everything up again. I love this feature of this machine. That thumb wheel makes all the difference because you really can do perfect placement of your needle without having to reach all the way around to the flywheel. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and do this all the way to the seam. Here we go. Ooh, there, right on the dot. Lock that stitch. Cut your threads. All right, and then finally the fourth side. We're going to add that fourth side. Coming over here, again, lining up, right sides together. I like to use just a couple of pins, just a couple of clips to hold it in place while we get it lined up and started. And make sure that you pull this other piece away, get that seam allowance out of the way. Sometimes if it's a little bulky, make sure you just get it right in there and use your thumb wheel if you have it. And don't forget to lock the stitch. There we go. One more stitch, there we go. Lock that in place. Okay, now we have finished sewing our sides to the bottom, and now what we can do is we're going to sew side to side. So you reach it up like this, you're going to take these, put them right sides together, and here we're just going to sew from the edges down to the dot. We're going to sew from the top of the bag raw edges down to the dot. So line those raw edges up and put it under your presser foot and lower your presser foot, and then we're going to take a few steps in, and I'm going to use the reverse button to go back and reinforce that so it doesn't pull out. Make sure to keep all of your bag pieces out of the way, and we're going to go down to the dot and lock the stitch. Go all the way down to the dot. There we go. Oh, I love it when you hit the dot. And go ahead and lock it. Cut. All right, and let's continue in that fashion. I'm going to do the next two bag side raw edges and line them up. We're going to start at the top and sew down to the dot. Here we go. Now, traditionally, these rice bags were used in Japan to go to the market to buy and store rice. That's why they call them rice bags. And you can make them in any different size that you want. I mean, we are making ours with 7.5-inch squares. You can make them a little larger, you can make them a little smaller. You can totally customize them. So that's really fun too. They used to use these to carry their rice to the temples for an offering, or just to carry them home and store them in their larders or their pantries. There we go. Last side here. Okay. Ooh, perfect. Now, are you following along? I hope so. Now we have our little box, our little cube. And the thing you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to turn it right side out. So we have the pretty side out, and you can kind of poke at those corners a little bit just to make sure that they pop out. Now is the time, if you didn't actually hit the corner perfectly and there was a little hole left, you could go back and easily fix it and make sure that those dots match. But right now you can see that my corners are turning out just fine. But this is the time you would want to check your corners and make sure that they all meet and trim any extra threads. There we go. Last one. Okay. Now, there, we've got our little cube ready to go. Isn't it cute? It's coming together. Now what we need to do is do the exact same thing with our lining pieces. So I'll go grab mine, you grab yours, and we'll meet back here and do those. Okay, you're having fun, right? I am. I know I am. So what I did was I marked dots 1/4 inch in on all 4 corners of the bottom of the lining. So you can see my little black dots here. And I also did that on 2 sides of all the sides. So these have already been marked. And all we're going to do is kind of the same thing, except we're not going to use batting this time. We're going to just be joining the sides to the bottom of the lining pieces, matching up the dots and locking at the dots. So let's do that right now. And we'll go ahead and drop that down, use the thumb wheel, lock it in place, and go right to the other side. This goes even faster than it did with the outside of the bag. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to add all 4 sides to the bottom. You'll notice that I didn't use a different fabric here. I used the same fabric for all 5 of my squares so that my lining was all the same. Now the only thing that you want to remember is when you're adding the last side piece is to leave an opening between 3 and 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these kind of on fast speed for you so you don't have to sit and watch me do it. But on the last piece that I'm going to add, I'm going to leave an opening because that's where we're going to turn the bag. Now I'm getting ready to add my last or 4th side piece of the lining. So we want to lock our stitch at the dot, come in maybe 1.5 inches, lock it again, stretch it over, lock it here, and then sew to the dot. We're leaving an opening. So let's watch how I do that. And we're going to lower the presser foot. There we go. Now let's just go in maybe 1.5 inches. Stop, lock the stitch in place, cut the threads, just stretch it this way, lower the presser foot, press the lock button. We're going to lock the stitch in place again and go right to the dot. There we go. Lock that. I think that's the hardest part of this whole process, and it's not even hard. But what we have here is now we have an opening where we'll be turning the bag right side out. So now go ahead and add, sew all of your side seams from the top all the way down to the dot. I'll do mine, and we'll meet back here with the next step. Now I've finished my cube or the bag lining, but we're going to leave it wrong sides out for now. All right, and you can see I've got my hole here, and we're going to use this in a little bit. But now we need to make the tabs for our bag, and what I've got here are some strips, and we're going to sew 2 strips together. And so they can match or they don't have to match, it's up to you. But 2.5 inch strips, I'm putting them right sides together. And we're going to go ahead and stitch down one side across the short side at the bottom and back up. Go ahead and make sure that you lock your stitches at the start and stop so that they don't pull out, because we have to turn this right sides out. All right, let's sew these. Don't forget, we have to do a little back stitch here or reverse, just to make sure that we strengthen the start and stop of that seam. And I'm going to just sew my 1/4 inch all the way down. You could actually use 2 different fabrics if you want. It gives it a whole different effect, but I sort of like that the tabs are the same on both sides, and I happen to have 2 strips of this pretty check fabric that I think looks really great. And by the way, all of this fabric just came from my stash and my leftovers. Now when you get to the end, or close to the end, stop 1/4 inch from the end. Don't go all the way off. Stop and pivot. It doesn't have to be exactly 1/4 of an inch. You can see that's more like 3/8 of an inch. And that's okay. I'm going to do one more. We're going to pivot, and we're going to go back up the other side. This is going to make the tabs for our drawstrings. There we go. Once you get used to making these, you can knock them out in about an hour and a half once you're used to the process. And it would just be really great to make some for gifts. I think it would be a fun thing to do. And then backstitch to reinforce, and then stop and trim your threads. Now what we're going to do down here at the very end is we are going to clip the corners, and this is something we need to do. And I'm even going to trim that seam allowance just a little bit because we don't want any bulk at the end. So now what we have to do is we're going to turn this. So go grab your chopstick or a turner, and I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it. So now it's time to turn this. And if you have one of those little tools called a snag grab it, I think, is that what it's called, Mr. Kim? You actually remembered before I did. You could insert it up in the middle, in the right side, grab it and pull it through, or you can use a chopstick. Considering this is a Japanese rice bag, I thought it'd be kind of fun to use the chopstick. So you want to kind of push the end in to get it started, like this. And then once you have a little hole there, you use the chopstick and kind of get it going. It takes a little bit of finessing, but once you get it started, oh, here's the fun part. It's like magic. Watch this. I love this. Then you can just push it all the way through and turn it. Ha ha! How fun is that, right? Okay, so we want to turn it. Now, while the chopstick is still in there, we want to push out the corners. See that? We want to make sure that we push out the corners, and then you can bring the chopstick out. Now, the next thing we'll have to do is go over to the iron, and we're going to have to press this flat and get it nice and flat. So I'll meet you at the iron so I can show you how we do that. Now this next step isn't difficult, but it does take a little time, and you want to be careful not to burn your fingers. So if you're working with a young person or somebody who's not real at ease with using an iron, you might want to help them a little bit with this step. But what we want to do is we want to get in here and just make sure that we have the seams as untucked here as possible. So you'll see that when I get started, I'm only pressing the first side, and steam helps. You can use steam. And then we can flip it over and work on the other edges. We just want to try to make sure there's no tucks in there, because we are going to top stitch this to make it look really nice. But you want to work in there and get this nice and flat. See that? How nice and pretty that looks? Now, I've already gone ahead and done one, so you don't have to sit and watch me do the whole strip. But now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch each side. So meet me back at the sewing machine, and I'll show you how to set it up to do a beautiful top stitch. Now we're going to do a top stitch on our strip that is going to be for our tabs on the bag. So I'm using my G-foot, and this G-foot comes standard on, I think, every Janome sewing machine comes with a G-foot, but it has a little flange, kind of 1/3 of the way across. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our utility stitches. And Mr. Kim, do you want to zoom in here? And I'm going to go from the utility stitch menu, and I'm going to go to stitch number 4. That's what it is on my Continental M8. And you can see that it moves the needle position over a little bit to the left side of the flange, and it is the perfect foot for using for top stitching. I just love this foot. Now you want to make sure that you increase your stitch length to 3.0. 2.5 is a little bit too small. Don't do anything down here. That was already moved by choosing this stitch. We just want to increase the stitch length to 3.0. And then we're going to top stitch right along the edge here. Now, what's so great about this is the flange keeps the strip itself in line, and this makes a beautiful professional top stitch finish. And we're going to go down each side, and you're just going to let the presser foot and the feed dogs do the work of feeding this through. All you have to do is keep that strip straight. Let the machine do all the work of adding a beautiful top stitch. This just makes it look so elegant and professional. Here we go, right off the edge, because we're going to end up trimming that end anyway. Okay, and now we're going to flip it over, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Okay, that was fast. And now, Mr. Kim, I think you can get in there and kind of see how beautiful that top stitch is. Makes it really, really nice. And these are going to be our tabs. So now we have to cut these into 8 equal lengths. So it's really easy. I just like to fold it, and I'm going to cut and then fold it again, and cut and fold it one more time, and cut, so that you have 8 little pieces that are about 5 inches in length. So go cut this strip into 8 pieces about 5 inches. If yours end up being more like 4.5 inches, that's okay. They just all need to be consistent. So you need 8 pieces from this long strip. Now you should have 8 of these little tab pieces, and we are going to be attaching them to our bags now. And we're still not using our lining yet, but we will very soon. Now what you want to do is you want to take these and fold these right sides together, or wrong. I don't have a right or a wrong side right now, but we want to fold them in half, lining up the raw edges, and we're going to put 2 on each side panel, about 1 inch from each seam. So the first thing you want to do is just put a little magic clip there or pin it, and we're going to fold these in half. Again, I'm kind of eyeballing it about 1 inch from each seam.
So you're making the folded part at the bottom?
Yes, the raw edges align with the raw edge of the bag, and the fold is down here, okay, down at the bottom. So we're going to clip those on, and we're going to do 2 on each side of the bag. And always, again, eyeballing it about 1 inch from the seam, that seam right there. What we're going to do is we're going to use the clips to hold them in place, but then we're going to actually baste these to the top of the bag. I find that it's very helpful to actually baste these in place, because then you don't have clips or pins getting in the way. And we're just going to go ahead and keep folding these. Doesn't this little plaid look really great with this fabric? And again, I found all of this in my stash. All right. Fold these raw edge to raw edge. And clip 2 more to go. And just an inch from the seam. Then I have bright yellow strips for the ties. I think this is going to be just adorable. Okay, there. Now what we're going to do is set up our machine to baste. So I've put my A foot on now, and what I'm going to do is lengthen my stitch length to about 5, because I just want to baste these in place. And I have selected the 1/4 inch over here from the decorative quilt menu, and because I want it very close to the edge, and actually you can do it even closer if you want, more like 1/8 of an inch, and you don't have to back stitch. This is just to hold these little tabs in place. And I'm just going to do each one at a time, just to kind of hold that in place. Very close to the raw edges. And keep working your way around. Oops. You just want to make sure that you're not sewing anything underneath. I think that if you tried to just pin these and then when we attach the lining, it just gets a little complicated. Whereas if you do the basting, they're secure, they're out of the way, you don't have to worry about any hardware getting in the way. And we are almost done. Two more. By basting, if any of these stitches did show, once you add the lining, you can easily rip it out. Okay, that's it. Now move all your clips for the moment. And what we're going to do now, see, we've got these little tabs all basted on. Now we're going to put this together with the lining, and then we're going to stitch all the way around. Okay, the next step is to put our bag with the tabs inside the lining bag. So what we're doing is we have the wrong side of our lining facing out, and we have the pretty side of our lining facing the pretty side of our bag. Can you see that? And what we're going to do is, it's very important to line up the seams. And I'm lining up the seams here, and then I'm going to kind of push the seams opposite each other and put a clip there to hold it in place. And we're going to do that for all 4 seams. All right, we're going to line up those seams first and make sure that the seam allowances are pushed opposite. Then put a little clip there to hold it in place. I've got one more to go here. There we go. Okay, and you want to make sure that those tabs are laying nice and flat in there, and it might help to put a couple more clips so that the raw edges stay aligned in between those seam intersections. I totally want to go to Japan now and go and buy rice and put it in my rice bag. I think, Mr. Kim, we need to go back to Japan just so I can try that, test the theory.
I think everybody watching wants to go also.
Okay, here we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change our foot. I'm going to use my AccuFeed Flex, and I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and then we're going to stitch all the way around the top, and then we'll be ready to birth the bag. So get your AccuFeed Flex or your walking foot, and if you have one and it just makes it a lot simpler with all the layers, go ahead and get that, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, I've added my AccuFeed Flex foot, and I've engaged this little icon right here on the screen to show that I'm using that foot, and you'll see it reflected over here. So do whatever you need to do to set up your walking foot with your foot. And now we're just going to start sewing. I'm going to take one of these clips out. We're going to align the edge here with the edge of the foot. I still have my 1/4 inch stitch selected, and I do want to lock the stopping and starting points, making sure that they won't pull out. And then let's just go kind of slow because we're going over lots of layers, and we're going to take the clips out as we go, making sure that the rest of the bag stays out of the way. And be careful when you get to the seams to make sure that those seams match up perfectly. There we go. Go slow, adjust your raw edges as you go. Just keep it nice and straight. I love using the AccuFeed Flex foot. It is marvelous for layers. And the M8 has such a strong motor, and just, it's like a hot knife through butter. It just doesn't even hesitate going over all these layers. Can do a lot more than this. Here you go. Keep working your way around. Again, I'm using my fingers to kind of feel where the intersection of those seams are, and they matched perfectly. Mr. Kim, you're doing a fabulous job, by the way. Thank you for being my ace videographer. I know everybody out there appreciates it. All right, look, we're coming around to where we started. As soon as we connect with that starting point, go ahead and lock your stitches in place. Oh, this is getting exciting because now we get to see what happens when we pull it through the opening that we left. So before we do that, just make sure that we've cut all the raw edges of everything in there. It looks like everything is caught beautifully. And now what we're going to do is carefully start working the bag through the opening of the lining. So let's just kind of work it. And this is why you actually want to have those seams reinforced, because there is a little push and pull going on here, and we don't want those seams to pop open. So it was good that we locked all those seams. Here we go. Oh my goodness, how exciting. All right. There we go. Now we are going to tuck that lining down in and kind of check all of our tabs, making sure everything, look at, there's my intersection with the outside and the lining. It's perfect. So you just want to make sure everything is looking really snazzy. And now what we're going to do, we have a couple things we have to do. We want to go back to the iron. Oh, would everyone like to meet Bobbin? Come here, Miss Bobbin. This is a new addition to the Einmo household. She came to say hello. She's a little puppy, and her name is Miss Bobbin. Isn't that appropriate? She's so cute. Yes, hello. hello, baby. You came to say hi to everyone. And Cheeto and Bobbin are the sweetest together. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we need to go over to the iron and do a little pressing before we finish sewing. Okay, now we have a little pressing to do. So in your lining where the opening was, where we pulled the whole bag through, I just want to give it a little press because we're going to stitch that. And I just want to press that so that the seam allowance is facing inward. So we can just do a nice little seam right there. Nobody's ever going to see it. You could hand stitch it if you want, but why? Next, what we're going to do is we're going to tuck this in for the time being till we get back to sewing, and we're going to give the edge a really good press. We want to make sure that this is pressed really well because we're going to top stitch this here. And we're going to use our AccuFeed Flex foot, and we're going to give this a really nice professional finish. And I think Mr. Kim's doing a great job of getting this. It's okay to use a little steam here to give that a nice flat edge. We want the lining all turned in so we can't see it on the outside. Don't you love those little checkered tabs? I think they're so cute. On my other bag, I used some Japanese coin fabric that has some cats in it and chopsticks for the lining, which I thought was fun. I'm really enjoying all things Japan. I had the chance to visit there last year for the first time and fell in love with the country itself, the people, the country, everything Japanese. So, all right. Now we're going to go back and we're going to top stitch this and give it a nice professional finish. Now I still have my AccuFeed Flex foot on, but I have changed the sole plate to be the SD plate, and it has a flange right in the middle. This again is going to help us with that perfect top stitch. So you're going to want to change your machine back to the utility menu and then pick stitch number 4. As you can see, a lot of these stitches are grayed out because I have selected the walking foot or the AccuFeed Flex foot option, and I'm using my SD foot because I want that flange so that I can get a perfect top stitch here. And we're going to be stitching, you can start just about anywhere, but we want to put this under here so that the flange is on the outside of this edge, and it is going to ride up over this tab, and we're going to be stitching along here. Also, I'm going to increase my stitch length here to 3.3. I just think that gives it a very nice professional look. It's not too small, but it's not too long of a stitch length. And now we're just going to go slow. And we're just going to go around, giving it a very beautiful, professional finish. And anytime you see the little lining fabric peeking out, try to roll it under so that we get it tucked under and caught in that top stitch. This isn't hard, but you don't go fast. You just take your time and use control so that you can make sure that that lining stays tucked down in. I love the SD sole plate for the AccuFeed Flex foot. It's a really great one to have. If you don't have it, it's not expensive. You call your local Janome dealer and get it. You'll find lots and lots of uses for this particular sole for this foot. See, this isn't hard at all. And that flange right here just keeps everything lined up so beautifully. It's just wonderful. We're coming around to right where I started, and I started right in the seam, so that's exactly where I'm going to stop and lock my stitches, right there. Okay, and now you can see how beautiful it is. We've got that beautiful top stitch going around, and it keeps the lining down in. Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and sew this opening shut. And I just do that by lining up those edges that I've turned under at the iron, and I'm going to sew right next to the edge, locking the stitch in place. I'm literally sewing between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch away, and just make sure those folded edges are lined up. Like I said, you could do this by hand, but why? Why when your sewing machine does such a brilliant job? This is going to be down inside. No one's ever going to see it. There you go, see? And now I'm just going to clip those little threads and make sure those are nice and trimmed, and tuck my lining down in. Oh, it's beautiful. I love the colors, the fabrics, everything. So we're in the home stretch. The last thing we have to do is to make the drawstrings. So let's head back over to the cutting table where I'm going to show you we have to draw a line, then we're going to press, then we're going to stitch, and we're done. What we need to do here on a flat surface is we need to mark a line on the wrong side of the 2.5-inch strips we're going to use for our drawstrings or our ties. So you can use a friction pen because you don't need the mark to stay there. We just need to know where the center point is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press up the raw edges on each side up to the center point. And we're going to press, and then once that's pressed, we're going to press that in half again. So let's go to the iron, let's get this pressed. What we're trying to make is a drawstring that looks just like this, and it's pretty quick and easy to do. All right, so you're going to need a hot iron, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring the raw edges to the center. I'm going to move my hands out of the way. So you can see we're just bringing these together. You don't want them to overlap yet, or at all. We're going to fold it in half. And this, because I am using a friction pen, that mark will disappear as soon as I run my hot iron over it. But that's okay. We're just trying to get this so I know where to bring the raw edges so that they touch, that they meet each other. And work your way down. Don't make yourself crazy over this, and just, be careful with your fingers. We don't want any burned fingers on this, and if you are working with a child or a youngster, make sure you give them some help or you do it for them.
Or a husband.
Or a husband, yeah. All right, I burned my fingers plenty of times, but I've gotten pretty good to where I do keep my fingers about 3 inches out of the way. Now you can see how this is working. And we're going to just go ahead and keep pressing here. Okay. Already my line is kind of disappearing because of the heat on the pad itself. But it's okay. I've got the hang of it now. Okay. So I would love to request that for those of you making this, that you log on to Facebook, and on the Janome Sewing Classroom page, please consider posting your projects. We want to see your Japanese rice bags. All right, so now that we've got that done, we're going to press it in half again so that all the raw edges are enclosed. This is even easier. And you're just going to line up the folded edges. We are going to top stitch this, and then we're going to thread these drawstrings through our rice bag tabs, and your rice bag will be all done. And literally, even as we've filmed this, I think we're still under 2 hours. But plan on spending about 2 hours from start to finish to get this done. Remember, this is all about being done before dinner. One last tip. I got so excited. I forgot to tell you that we need to turn under the short ends. So sorry about that. I was so excited about getting this all finished that I forgot about turning it under. So give it a really good press, because we don't want any raw edges showing. And then you can press it. There we go. Now we're ready to top stitch. See, everyone makes mistakes. We're ready to top stitch this tie closed. Now we have folded it in like I showed you, so we have the folded edges that are aligned. I have put my G foot back on and gone back to the utility menu and stitch number 4. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch all the sides. So go ahead and do that. Again, my stitch length is 3.0. And you'll notice that I am letting the presser foot and the feed dogs do all the work. I'm just guiding. This makes such a lovely finished tie. I love the yellow. It's so cheerful and sunny. But use whatever you have on hand. It just takes one 2.5 inch by 40 inch strip. Now when you get down to the end, don't go off the edge. Go to about 1/8 of an inch. Leave your needle in the down position. Your presser foot lifts up. I have selected that here, and I've been using that all day. Then we're going to let this swing around. We're going to stitch to the other side to about 1/8 of an inch away. Swing it around again and finish top stitching the other side. It doesn't take long at all. I'm so glad you can join me in my studio and you can see how things really are. Kitties getting involved, needles coming unthreaded. I mean, stuff happens.
Cameraman messing up.
I don't think the cameraman messed up at all today. And I'm going to go ahead and trim that thread and then keep going to the end. And here we want to get about 1/8 of an inch or a little less from the edge. Spin it and go to the other side. And guess what? One more lock in place. And then clip the threads or cut the threads. All right, now what we're ready to do is we are ready to feed these through our bag. Cheeto's back to inspect my progress here, my work. Actually, I think he would probably try to get in the bag if I let him. All right, now you're going to want to thread your drawstrings through, not at an intersection where there is a seam, but in the middle of one of your side panels. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here and feed it through 4 of them. And try not to let them get twisted. And you want to do just 4 of them. Okay. And kind of do it about halfway. And then take this side and do the other 4. Hi, Cheeto. I know you would like to get in there. You think that was made for you. But guess what? I don't think you're going to fit. And again, make sure that they don't get twisted. That's the one thing you kind of want to watch out for. And we're feeding them through our tabs. And then once we get this one through and we make sure that they are not twisted, we're going to line up the ends. And then we're going to put a knot. You know, you could just sew these shut, or you can do a cute little knot. You could put a little gewgaw there, a little something. But I like to just knot these. Now, what we're going to do, don't pull it tight yet. We're going to start on the side with the knot, and we are going to feed our second drawstring strap through. We're going to do 4 on this side and let it hang out over here for a little bit. Again, being careful not to twist it. And then we're going to feed it through 4 on this side, like this. This will create the drawstring effect. All right, there we go. Again, check to make sure they're not twisted in any way. Then you can take these and go ahead and knot or sew these together. But I'm going to do a little knot this time and just knot them. And now look at this. There you go. You've got it done. Here is your completed Japanese rice bag. What do you think? Now, isn't that cute? I'll get my other one here so you can see that too. I used some Japanese fabrics with cats. I really like the cats. And here we go. We've got our little Japanese rice bags. So there you go. Another project completely done before dinner. So I can't wait to hear from you. Please drop comments. I'll try to respond to them. Post your pictures of your projects on the Janome Sewing Classroom page. And we'll be looking to see what you did, how creative you were. Wasn't this fun? Every time I do one of these projects, Mr. Kim, I think it's my favorite one. So anyway, from Cheeto and Mr. Kim and all of us in the studio, and Miss Bobbin, I don't know where she is right now, but we all want to thank you for joining me in my studio for another Done Before Dinner. Bye, everybody.